Many people spend their lives trying to avoid disappointment from others, but they're completely fine with letting themselves down. If you've ever felt okay with letting yourself down, but you're terrified of letting others down, this episode's for you. Hello everyone, welcome back to your regularly scheduled self-reflection. I am Tash and this is Things We Say in Therapy, a place to feel seen, to learn some psychology and to self-reflect on some hard truths to improve your mental health. Now, the point of this podcast is to be uncomfortable, right? I'm guiding people into discomfort because that's what's necessary for growth and to improve your mental health. We're going to get particularly uncomfortable today, because the truths about how we treat ourselves versus how we treat others is tough to deal with. It's brutal, but noticing them is the first step to change. So why do we tolerate disappointing ourselves but panic at the thought of disappointing others? We're going to talk about why a fear of disapproval and a fear of people being disappointed in you is so common and how it impacts your decisions and your self-worth. The very basic watered down version of the difference between disappointing yourself and disappointing others from a psychological perspective is when you're scared of disappointing others, you're scared of abandonment, you're scared of rejection, you're scared of being seen a certain way. Whereas when you're disappointing yourself, that's invisible. Only you have to deal with that, right? And you can numb it, you can suppress it, you can push it down, but the disappointment from others is visible. It's out in the open and people can see it, right? And when you're scared of being disapproved of by other people or people being disappointed in you and your actions, those fears are more important than your self-worth, your self-esteem, what you want in life. Somewhere along the way in your life path, you decided that other people's opinions of you were more important than your opinion of yourself. It's very common. I was like this for a very long time and didn't even realize it. So I'm hoping that getting this out there and speaking about this out loud will help some people realize how this is affecting their life and hopefully they can make a change. So let's talk about the behavior patterns that come along with this. The very basic reality of what we're talking about here is people pleasing versus self-neglect. You're prioritizing other people's comfort and other people's needs over your own. It's very common. A lot of people sacrifice themselves for the comfort of others, whether that's emotionally, physically, spiritually. People do it all the time without even noticing that they're doing it because we naturally move towards comfort. We naturally want to stay comfortable within ourselves. And for a lot of people, that comfort requires pleasing everyone. The brutal truth here is that we have learned that our value as a person is dependent on how much external validation we get from other people, not on our personal growth and our opinion of ourselves. In childhood, when we get conditional love, when we feel rejected by our parents, who are supposed to be our caregivers, the people who love us most in the world, when we're conditioned like this in childhood to learn that we have to act a certain way in order to get approval from people we love, in our adult lives, this translates into social approval, meaning dopamine hits, meaning that your perceived threat and anxiety is reduced. And rejection triggers an abandonment fear. It triggers shame, it triggers self-doubt and self-hate because we think that we've done something wrong when we're not approved of by other people. When we disappoint ourselves, when we ignore our own needs, we feel some level of guilt sometimes if you're somewhat self-aware. A lot of people don't because they don't realize that they're doing that and they only know to chase others' approval. But the emotion that's associated with disappointing yourself is guilt because you're letting yourself down. But guilt is easily ignored. Like I said, you can shove it down, you can numb it. Whereas when you're disapproved of by others, that comes with a lot of shame about who you are. That comes with a lot of self-doubt and self-hate because you've learned to rely on external validation so much. That's not so easily ignored because shame comes along with a lot of other deep wounds that are arguably harder to deal with than the guilt. When you feel that shame, you start to think horrible things about who you are. Whereas when you're ignoring the guilt of ignoring your own needs, you don't even know what you're ignoring because you don't really know who you are because you spend all your time chasing what other people want for you. I used to constantly concede after setting boundaries with people when I first started setting boundaries, because part of me always knew that I needed to, but I still struggled with that fear of disappointing other people, fear of disapproval of others, so much that I would set the boundary and then panic because it was met with resistance or disappointment, and that overwhelming shame of worrying that I'd been too harsh or done something wrong made me go back on it. Even though I was exhausted and I was really struggling with my mental health at the time, I abandoned myself because I was more scared of disappointing them. So let's dive a little bit deeper into why we fear disappointment from others. The core reason is that fear that you get, that deep-rooted fear, abandonment, rejection, fear of conflict, or fear of being seen a certain way. We're biologically wired to avoid being outcast by social groups. Our brains interpret subconsciously disappointing others as a threat to our survival, even when it's just a meeting or a favor for somebody. Historically, being outcast from a social group meant you were dead, basically. Another reason we fear rejection is our childhood experiences. Conditional love, neglect from parents, or consistent criticism. It teaches kids that your value depends on their approval, and then in your adulthood translates into needing external validation from your close bonds in your life, friends, partners, etc., even from work, colleagues, bosses. Another brutal truth here is that when we know that we've disappointed somebody, it kind of erodes that illusion that we're indispensable to somebody. It's nice to feel like you're irreplaceable, but a lot of the time we can associate feeling indispensable or irreplaceable with being morally sound. So when you're feeling dispensable because you've disappointed or upset somebody, we see this as a moral failing. We see this as a character flaw, that there's something deeply wrong with us. It's important to distinguish the difference between worrying that you're disappointing somebody because letting that person down in that context would be legitimately letting them down without any kind of expense to your own well-being. Or are you avoiding disappointing them because it triggers shame, it triggers that guilt that you've been trained to feel when disappointing somebody, and letting them down in that particular context wouldn't necessarily have a negative impact on your well-being. It would just be you being there for a loved one. It can be hard to distinguish between those when you're so used to abandoning yourself to be there for other people. But you need to notice the feelings that come up when you want to say no to something. So why do we tolerate disappointing ourselves but not others? The likelihood is that you tolerate disappointing yourself because it doesn't hurt your social image. It doesn't hurt your external persona that you're portraying to the world. It only hurts your future self. And you likely don't value yourself or your needs very much. This could be because you barely recognize who you are, because you haven't spent any time trying to get to know yourself or realizing what you even need to prioritize in your own life because you spend all your time being there for other people. The self-punishment that you're giving to yourself when you prioritize other people's needs over your own, that future self that you're betraying by disappointing yourself constantly. It doesn't matter in that moment. When you're getting external validation, it doesn't matter that down the line this is going to affect you and what you want and your life, because you're getting that dopamine hit that you've been trained to crave from pleasing other people. You've also developed a cognitive dissonance between what you know you really need, which is to value yourself, and what's making you comfortable in the moment, which is valuing other people. You've convinced yourself that the self-neglect that you take part in every day is completely fine because you're comfortable in it. It's become a habit. It's become you. Over time, when we do this for long periods of time throughout our lives, our identity as a person just completely erodes. You no longer know who you are because you've spent so long catering to everyone else, sacrificing repeatedly, and you're gradually training your brain to accept less and less and less in life until you're a complete shell of a human being who only caters to other people. But because you don't know who you are anymore, because you have nothing to go to, nothing to stand for, nothing to fight for at that point, it's so easy just to keep going like that. And therefore it's easier to tolerate disappointing ourselves. Eventually you're getting all of your satisfaction from life out of pleasing others. So what are the costs of this pattern on your mental health? Resentment, burnout, loss of identity. When you're constantly abandoning yourself to be there for other people, it becomes an addiction to get those dopamine hits. You burn yourself out constantly being there when other people click their fingers. You become resentful because there is no reciprocation in the relationships, or not enough reciprocation. Maybe you've lost so much self-value that you never ask anything of other people because you don't think you're worthy of that. It has a massive effect on the relationships that you have in your life, letting other people take advantage of you. You can invite some really toxic people or behaviors into your life. There's an imbalance, or you can become codependent with people. Codependency meaning you value the other person's needs more than your own. This also comes with chronically low self-worth. You don't value yourself enough to take care of yourself, or at least not in the way that you deserve. It comes with regret upon realizing what you've spent years doing without even knowing. When you're so deep in this behavior, this chronic need to not disappoint other people, there's a catch-22, because when you abandon your own needs for others, you are deeply unhappy with who you are because you feel like you can't do what you want. It's kind of like being in a cage, and that cognitive dissonance comes in where you have that deep innate desire to be something, to get to where you want to go, but your trauma and your pain is keeping you locked in a cage where you feel like the only way that you can be happy is being there for others. But when you do what you want, when you get out of that cage and you, even if it's something small, you know, saying no or doing something that you want to do that doesn't involve running to help other people, you just feel guilty because you're valuing yourself over other people, and that feels wrong because you don't think that you're worthy of that. You may have disappointed others and you're not bending over backwards to please them. That comes with a lot of guilt. This is why we need to learn to feel good about what's best for us instead of feeling guilt for prioritizing others. Every time you put others before yourself at a detriment to your health, to your well-being, you are teaching yourself that you are less important, less worthy, less valuable than other people. And eventually you start to believe it, even if it's just subconscious. So let's get into how we begin shifting this pattern. How do you start valuing yourself again? Step 1, always awareness. Notice when your fear of disappointing others outweighs your concern for yourself. Be aware that there is a difference between being there for loved ones in times of need versus abandoning your own priorities and your own needs to be there for others. Step 2, boundaries. Learning to tolerate the discomfort that comes with standing your ground and then observing the outcome. This can also be really valuable in showing you which relationships in your life are actually healthy and worth keeping in your life, depending on how they react to your healthy boundaries. Step 3, this is something that really helped me, is speaking to a safe person. You don't have to do this by any means, only you know what's best for you and what will help. But personally, I found it really helpful to speak to somebody because I didn't realize how I had been treated by people or how I was treating myself and how mismatched my priorities were until I told somebody else how I was being treated and how I reacted to that treatment. That really opened my eyes to the fact that my relationship with myself and my relationships in my life at the time were not healthy for me. And they had been subconsciously bad for a long time, years, because I had learnt to prioritize other people's needs above my own, and I didn't realize what I was doing. I just felt that guilt, that shame of disappointing other people, that fear of abandonment. I was catering more to other people's needs, other people's wants, than I was to my own. Step 4 is to reflect on the shame triggers. So what is that fear that you're feeling when you disappoint other people? Is it a fear of rejection? Is it a fear of abandonment? Is it a fear of conflict? Is it a fear of being seen in a certain way? Why is that guilt too uncomfortable for you to feel? Step 5 is to practice validating yourself. Practice saying yes to yourself instead of other people. Practice treating your needs as if they matter, as if they are legitimate needs, just as you would other people's. This requires self-compassion. It requires you to learn how to validate yourself and be there for yourself when you're feeling emotional discomfort. You need to learn healthy standards for yourself. This includes reflecting on what really matters to you, figuring out who you are at your core so that you know what to value. Only you will know that. Don't go outsourcing to other people trying to get answers. Only you know what really matters to you. People who spend their lives doing things to please other people often just don't even know what their basic values are, because they spend so long internalizing what other people value and other people's opinions. None of this will feel good at first, by the way. You might feel guilty, you might feel selfish for prioritizing yourself. It might even be scary because it's such uncharted territory for you. But that is the point. Growth requires discomfort. I promise you, it is not selfish to prioritize yourself. If saying yes to doing something for someone else requires you to abandon your well-being, requires you to abandon your own needs, it is not selfish. However, it's very important to know the difference between using this as a weapon and using this legitimately, because people can use valuing themselves and putting themselves first as a weapon to abandon loved ones in times of need. There are going to be times where the relationships that you value in your life do require nourishment, require you to put your own things on the back burner to be there for other people, but that just depends on what the context is, and it depends on how much you'd be betraying yourself. So as a little summary, the reason we tolerate disappointing ourselves is because it's invisible. Only we feel that. It allows us to keep up appearances. It allows us to have the illusion of control that the other people in our life aren't going to leave us. We fear disappointing others because the shame we feel, whatever that may be, it's immediate, it's intense, and other people can see that. Growth requires you to be able to sit in the discomfort of other people without sacrificing yourself, without conceding to boundaries, staying strong in what you need. You can't control how other people feel. You can only control doing what you know is best for you. Send this to somebody who might be struggling with people pleasing or prioritizing their needs. Notice one way that you're avoiding disappointing someone. Ask yourself what would happen if you prioritized yourself instead. Is it really that scary? You deserve to be more than just someone's side character. The cost of living the life you want is the discomfort that comes with learning to put yourself first. Thank you so much for listening to episode 18 of Things We Say in Therapy. It's been such a pleasure having you here. Please follow, subscribe on whatever platform you're streaming this on. I'm on TikTok and Instagram, so go and find me there. I post content daily about honest truths about mental health and uncomfortable conversations. Discomfort is so necessary for growth, and I'd love to be the person to help guide you through that. If this felt uncomfortable, that means something clicked. I'll see you again. Bye.